This is WMAL TV channel 7, Washington DC. It's 5:30 and it's time now for News 7, the evening report. Tuesday, December 16th, 1969. Good evening, everybody. I'm Peter Wiggins. News. What's happening?
If you're up toward, let's say, southern Maine.
The Supreme Court ruled yesterday that Negroes have the same right as whites to enjoy a community swimming pool or other recreation area whose membership is tied to living in the area. Divided 5-3 in a case involving a pool and tennis club in Fairfax County's Bucknell Manor Subdivision, the court gave Negroes and whites who may rent or sell homes Negroes the power to enforce their property rights against private interference through lawsuits for sizable money damages. The decision is especially significant for the Washington area, where increasing numbers of middle-income Negroes are breaking the city's geographic barriers to live in the suburbs. More and more residential developers are offering similar recreation facilities. As part of their sales promotion, the suburbs have the numerous private community pools, 46 in Montgomery County alone, with many of them with open membership policies. However, a Montgomery Human Relations Commission spokesman said the new rule has a direct bearing on its fight to desegregate the Wheaton Haven Recreation Association pool and 13 other community pools that have racially restrictive membership policies.
From the Massachusetts Gaming Commission,
A 30% increase in Medicare monthly premium for coverage of doctor's fees is being considered by the Nixon administration. The recommended increase to keep the program solvent is based on cost estimates prepared by the Social Security Administration's Chief Secretary Robert J. Myers. Washington finally got a budget agreed by congressional conferees yesterday, 5 months and 14 days into the current fiscal year. It is $71.4 million higher than last year. The $655 million budget agreed to the House Senate conferees in a record figure. It permits Mayor Walter E. Washington to launch some new programs and require him to make minor personnel cuts in some existing programs. The conference report, which must be approved by both houses of Congress, adds about 4,000 new employees to the city payroll, but at the same time freezes 1,522 currently authorized by unfilled positions, giving the city a net gain of about 2,500 new employees. The freeze means that of about 3,000 positions now vacant, the mayor is barred from filling 1,522 of them. The net effect is to permit the mayor to stop new programs with his 4,000 new positions, but that force him to trim him into existing ones. The forced positions may be filled at a later date with a permission of the Congress.
he called Caesar's lawsuit.
The House voted unanimously yesterday for a 15% increase in Social Security benefits. The vote was 397 to nothing. Chairman Wilbur D. Mills, Democrat of Arkansas, of the Ways and Means Committee, told his colleagues that he favored putting the legislation back into the tax reform and rebate
So are you willing to
relief bill, now being debated by the point and the Joint Conference Committee. It was Mills who had separated the Social Security legislation from the General Tax Reform Bill when it was before his committee. But yesterday, Mills explained that a separate Social Security bill might become the vehicle for all kinds of extraneous riders, and the other body did the kind of the Christmas tree measure for which the Senate has become famous in recent years. The Social Security increase would have benefited about 25 million Americans. Under it, the average monthly payment for a retired couple would rise from $170 to $196, and a minimum benefit for a single person from
$20 million.
$55 to $64.
Direction of travel. The Sagamore carries about 40,000.
The Senate, after 3 hours of stormy and unusual secret debate, voted 73 to 17 to bar use of a new defense funds to finance the introduction of American ground combat troops in Laos and Thailand. The Senate approved a $69.3 billion appropriation for military and of a funding during the current fiscal year. There was a $637 million less than an appropriations measure already heavily cut by the House. The House had slashed Pentagon spending requests by $5.3 billion. The final Senate vote on the appropriations bill was 85-4. It came after the Senate rejected a new effort to kill the Nixon administration safeguard anti-ballistic missile program. An amendment offered by Senator Margaret Chase Smith, Democrat of Maine, that would have stripped nearly all of its $800 million for the safeguard development and procurement from the bill was defeated by a vote of 49 to 36. The Pentagon announced over the weekend that the estimated cost of the system's first phase had risen to $277 million to $4.4 billion. Panama's military strongman, Brigadier General Omar Torrijos, was asked yesterday by military colleagues.
Animals.
Leaders of the Bloodless Group said that they intended to
Red River Hog.
quicken the pace toward the restoration of the constitutional government.
Get cold.
Chicago. A spokesman for a Black Community Coalition in reaction to the slaying of two Black Panther leaders called yesterday for a dawn-to-dusk curfew
Left a gate
from dusk to dawn
baby gazelle. And the gazelle.
for whites in Negro neighborhoods. The announcement by a moderate civil rights leader, the Reverend C.T. Vivian, provoked immediate bewilderment among other Black leaders, several of whom rejected it.
It's about animals.
Mayor Richard J. Daley joined
An internal probe found animal care.
it that he denounced the curfew idea,
And follow up or support.
warned it would lead to the further popularization in the city, and promised that police would protect whites entering in Black areas.
And uncertain.
Mr. Vivian announced that the curfew would last from
Some 2 million.
6 p.m. to 6 a.m., which will start as he refused to discuss whether it will be enforced. Although a colleague, the Reverend J.R.G. Hargrave, said that there will be some enforcement of what we were talking about.
Despite
An extraordinary Citizens Commission of Inquiry to investigate the violent clashes between the police and Black Panthers was announced yesterday by 28 prominent civil rights leaders, legal figures, and church officials, including former Attorney General Ramsey Clark and former Supreme Court Justice Arthur J. Goldberg. The Citizens Group intends to direct a search and inquiry into the incidents in Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, Detroit, and other cities that where local police and the militant Black organization have battled in recent months. Goldberg and Roy Wilkins, the executive director at the NAACP, told a New York press conference that the 28 conveners of the inquiry are profoundly disturbed by the events. The most recent clashes in Chicago and Los Angeles, said their statement said, have raised grave questions over the whole range of civil rights and civil liberties as applied to the Black Panthers.
for shooting, an update on the condition and
The Black Panthers have contended that 20 of their leaders have been slain by what the charges as systematic aid
why a billion.
of a series of raids on Panther headquarters in various cities staged by local police with help from the federal officials. The Justice Department has denied any role in the shootouts and initiated a preliminary investigation under the Civil Rights Division. The local police department and involved have all contended that the Black Panthers started the shooting during the legal searches of the Panthers' quarters. As the Citizens Group, the Commission of Inquiry will have no legal standing and no power subpoena to gather evidence of the cases,
Under a half an hour.
but will be supported by funds from civil rights organizations and the service of some
Well, be going out to the polls.
prominent lawyers. Jack Greenberg, Director Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, said that the group will meet Saturday to decide on its procedures.
That's traffic at 5:30.
President Nixon announced last night an additional 50,000 reduction by the American troops sealing in Vietnam by April 15th, despite what he called a substantial increase in North Vietnamese infiltration in recent weeks. The president said in a brief television address that while there has been no progress whatsoever by the Paris negotiation, he was cautious by optimistic about the military and political situation in Vietnam. Acknowledging that he was taking the risk for peace and ordering an additional withdrawal, Mr. Nixon said a decision was made with a approval by the Saigon government and in consultation with other nations when we have troops in Vietnam. The cautious but persistent troop withdrawal strategy the president announced last night will fall short of the first deadline and the hope we'll express last June. He said it could hope that we could beat the timetable urged by the former Defense Secretary Clark M. Clifford for withdrawing 100,000 troops by the end of the year. A more critical question is how close the president will come to the second portion of the surpassing the Clifford timetable, remove it all. U.S. ground combat troops from South Vietnam by the end of 1970. Administration officials have sought to the fact that have sought to reinterpret and qualify that hope ever since the president expressed it at a news conference. What he was thinking about then they maintain was some progress in the negotiations too. As Mr. Nixon repeated last night, there's no progress whatsoever on that front. White House officials also sought last night to dispel the view that the president should be held to the hope for getting all U.S. combat forces out by any specific date. Meet a particular deadline, these officials said it is not important as whether total U.S. strategy is proceeding toward the desired objective.
One of the greatest things you can hand down to your family, because you're not just handing down.
Jerusalem, Premier Golda Meir, President and her new cabinet to the parliament yesterday rejected
It's not about the food, it's about family.
foreign efforts to settle the Middle East conflict, criticized the Soviet Union as their chief obstacle to peace, and said that recent remarks by U.S. Secretary of State William P. Rogers indicated that a gradual erosion in American position. Discarding foreign efforts to settle the Middle East conflict, Mr. Meir and Ms. Meir declared to her tough speeches that these powers think that their policy calls for an appeasement to the Arabs that have privilege, but we cannot recognize that threat to meditate. During the last 22 years, which we have seen the three Arab-Israeli wars, every possible substitute except for real peace and recognition of Israel's sovereignty has been tried. There's international guarantee that UN observers of United Nations Emergency Force and the Armistice Agreements, but all of these have failed, and each time Israel's existence were threatened because we had listened to the advice of our friends of relying on substitutes.
In September.
Washington Police Chief J.V. Wilson abruptly warned the 6 top district commanders yesterday that they may be replaced, that the city's surging crime rate is not slowed in the next 3 months. And in a related development, it was disclosed that from 30 to 50 agents from the Alcohol, Tobacco, Tax, and Firearms Division, the Internal Revenue Service will be signed to work in D.C. undercover in an attempt to crack down on hardcore criminal elements of the city, particularly those in violation of the firearms statutes.
Look at the video.
Concerning the inspectors, Wilson said, "I told each and every one of them that we are going to expect them to cut crime in the first quarter of 1970. Wilson held private meetings and held with the 6 men who had held the rank of inspector. I told them that if I don't get that change, I'm going to give some young lower-ranking captain to a chance to try," he said. Despite the presence of the more men and police equipment on the street, crime is still increasing. He told them it's not up to the district inspector today. First, that trend, he said. Athens Premier George Papadopoulos warned the Greek people tonight that last night there will be no return to democratic rule until his military-backed government succeeded in his social, economic, and cultural programs. In a State of the Nation review, Papadopoulos, the former Trilicon, who masterminded an overthrow of the civilian government in 1967 in March, said, "Communism is no longer a danger in the world, and the anarchy in the Western world threatening the democracy and prosperity of the peoples." At the time of the coup, the new military leaders explained that they were acting in an effort to threaten and leftist takeover. Speaking in the Chamber of Deputies before a carefully selected audience of 500 persons, the 50 UN Premier said the problem is not a police one, but a social problem. When our objectives are fulfilled in the country, then we shall put in operation the procedures that the Constitution approved in September 1968. Papadopoulos said that when these objectives were achieved, this government would decide to hold municipal elections. 1 year before our decision to hold parliamentary elections, we shall inform the Greek people at our intentions. During that year, we shall allow political parties to function, and afterwards we will call the people to cast their votes," he said. On to the weather. Variable continents, breezy, cold today, highs in upper 30s. Wednesday, fair, not quite so cold. Chance of precipitation near 0 today and at night. Today's temperature 41. Tonight will be about 30 degrees.
All year long. During the holidays, there's a little bit more in terms of wanting to provide that.
Right now, current conditions at
and warm clothing.
The shelters rely heavily on donations.
current conditions at National Airport at 5:45. We have a temperature of
He's 4. It's like a big family here.
at both National and Dulles Airport.
We just do everything.
It is 30 degrees with clear skies. And over at Andrews, it is
New Center 5. The shelters have posted wish lists online. They do include every
34 degrees with clear skies. And that is going to be after the WMAL News 7, 5:30 p.m. report on this December 16, 1969. Peerwoods, have you have a good evening, and coming next will be the White House Tree Lighting 1969 edition on
Through a tragic show.
Channel 7 WMAL TV, Washington, D.C. Have a good evening and see you 11. Good night.